Hi everyone, my name is Olivia LeBlanc and I will be presenting on Eastern equine encephalitis. So some background information. The first recorded epidemic of Triple E was in horses in 1831 Massachusetts. However, the virus itself, so the Eastern equine encephalitis virus, was not isolated and named until 1933. Triple E is rare and spread by mosquitoes. It's found mostly in eastern or Gulf Coast states, and it's endemic mostly to the Americas. It has a mortality rate of about 30%, but it can be up to 75%, depending on the outbreak that you're looking at. And it causes encephalitis, which is inflammation of the brain, and this is what causes such a high mortality rate. So, some information on the virus structure itself. The virus is from the family Togoviridae and the genus Alphavirus. A fun little fact is that the other genus in Togoviridae is Rubivirus, which is the genus in which rubella is found. So that's kind of interesting. The Eastern equine encephalitis virus is a single-stranded positive 42S RNA virus. It has spherical virus particles, and it's an enveloped icosahedral virus. Unfortunately, its virulence makes it hard to study the mechanisms of infection, but the envelope has 3 proteins that are implicated in infection, and these proteins are called E1, E2, and E3. So the envelope consists of a lipid bilayer that is derived from the host cell membrane and from these 3 proteins. The proteins E1 and E2 are known viral glycoproteins. E3 is actually dispatched as a soluble protein and was thought not to be involved in virulence until very recently, when it was found that it does have some sort of role, although we're not entirely sure what that role is. So on the surface of the virion, E1 and E2 form trimers that appear as spikes. And the E2 protein is actually thought to be the principal target for neutralizing antibodies, but some also react with E1, which is more recent research that's found that. And cross-reactivity among alpha viruses, so the ability of the immune system to kind of recognize other alpha viruses, is attributable to the E1 protein, since that protein is, it has its amino acid sequences more highly conserved than any of the other proteins across alpha virus. So it's more similar across the viruses found in alpha virus than any of the other proteins. So some interesting information on the genetic lineage of the Eastern equine encephalitis virus. There's actually 4 distinct genetic lineages, only one that circulates in North America and the Caribbean, and then 3 that circulate in Central and South America. So the North American and South American EEEV diverged about 922 to 4,856 years ago, whereas the 2 main South American Eastern equine encephalitis viruses lineages diverged about 577 to 2,927 years ago. The North American lineage is highly conserved with less than a 2% nucleotide sequence difference across strains, whereas the South American lineage is not as clearly associated with human disease and found more in equine diseases, which makes it harder for them to study this lineage and limited research because it's not as relevant to humans. However, research that has been done has found that the evolutionary differences between the North American and South American lineages suggest that they be considered separate species because they are so highly different. So, some signs and symptoms of Triple E. Fortunately, most infected individuals are asymptomatic because only about 4 to 5% of Triple E or Eastern equine encephalitis virus infections actually result in the Triple E disease. So it has an incubation period of about 4 to 10 days when somebody is actually symptomatic and doesn't have that asymptomatic illness. And when symptomatic, an individual can have either febrile illness or neurologic illness. The febrile illness is a lot like kind of general malaise and the flu-like symptoms. So there's fever, chills, and joint pain. It generally lasts about 1 to 2 weeks, and then most people recover completely. However, the febrile illness does have the potential to develop into the neurologic illness, which is caused by encephalitis, so the virus traveling to the brain and causing inflammation of the brain. And the neurologic illness, the symptoms include fever, headache, vomiting, seizures, behavioral changes, drowsiness, and coma, all due, again, to that inflammation of the brain. And about 1/3 of all individuals who develop encephalitis actually die, and death occurs about 2 to 10 days after the onset of symptoms. So it can be pretty fast, and it's found to be faster in the pediatric population. Most individuals who recover are left with permanent neurologic impairments because of the severity of these symptoms, and people with severe impairments often require long-term care and die a few years after contracting EEE, which does increase that mortality rate if we consider individuals who die from complications with the disease rather than just individuals who die directly from the disease in that 2 to 10 day period. So some more information on sequelae and death. The most common sequelae seen with EEE are seizures, again, due to that inflammation of the brain, that encephalitis. Interestingly, consistent abnormalities are seen in the temporal lobe specifically, which is the part of the brain that's on the side right here. Post-mortem findings demonstrate severe neuronal loss and loss of glial cells in the dorsal motor nucleus specifically, which indicates a potential cause of death. And I have a picture of the dorsal motor nucleus up in that corner. And this region helps control the parasympathetic nervous system, which means that death most likely occurs due to multiple organ failure, which gives us some more insight as to possible treatments and how the disease actually progresses. So treatment for EEE. Unfortunately, there are no medications available to directly treat EEE. The treatments that we have currently, it's rest, fluids, and over-the-counter pain meds that are used to relieve certain symptoms, especially in that febrile illness. Severe disease requires hospitalization for supportive treatment, again, for those seizures, potential coma, things like that. IVIG has occasionally been used as a treatment, but its efficacy is unknown. It hasn't been studied enough yet, but it is encouraging. Like I said, no medications are available, and there's no vaccine available either in humans. There is a vaccine available for horses, however, because it is incredibly devastating to the equine population. Since treatment's not available for EEE, prevention is key, and prevention consists mostly of avoiding that mosquito bite that would pass the disease to an individual. So things like insect repellent, wearing long sleeves and long pants, treating clothes with 0.5% permethrin, and then just generalized pest control for mosquitoes to prevent the population from getting out of control are kind of the best ways to prevent EEE. So in 2019, there was an outbreak of EEE. So the US generally averages about 7 cases per year, and there was no year between 1965 and 2018 that exceeded 15 cases. However, in 2019, there were 34 cases in the Northeast US. The median age of individuals infected was about 64, and 12 individuals did die. There was a correlation found between older age and likelihood of death, so it did primarily affect the older population. And the cause of this outbreak was unknown. However, it's thought that rising global temperatures accompanied by increased rainfall could lead to higher EEE disease rates because these conditions are favorable for mosquitoes. I wanted to talk a little bit about the life cycle real quick. So basically what happens is that marsh birds, songbirds specifically, are kind of the natural reservoir for the triple E virus. And it stays inside them, and then they are bitten by a C. melanura mosquito specifically. These mosquitoes love songbirds. And they're bitten by a female mosquito. And then this female mosquito goes on to bite another bird. C. melanura does not bite mammals usually, so humans and horses are not generally a target for C. melanura. So it goes on to bite another bird. Then this bird is now an incubator for the triple E virus. Once this bird is infected with the triple E virus, another mosquito, something that would bite a mammal, bites this bird, and then goes on to bite a human or a horse or another mammal and infects that animal with triple E. Humans and horses are actually dead-end hosts, so nothing really, there's nothing really in the life cycle after humans and horses are infected. And birds are actually also able to spread the disease among themselves through pecking, or if they feed on another bird that's died of the disease. So that's pretty interesting. And then these are my sources. Thank you.